Do you believe in ghosts? If not, then try setting foot in Hassan village. But remember, no one has ever escaped from there alive. Min came to uncover the truth about his family, but he didn't know. Every step he took was being watched. A house at the end of the village holds terrifying secrets and a cursed mirror. If you hear 3 knocks on the door, never open it. Chapter 1. Warning. In the fog, Min sat in an old, run-down bus, his head resting against the fogged-up window, eyes staring blankly outside. The air grew colder as the vehicle climbed deeper into the mountains. His breath left a thin mist on the glass, blending with the eerie scenery of the dense trees lining the roadside. As the bus approached Hassan village, the fog thickened. It wasn't the kind of morning mist he was used to. In the city, it was an impenetrable white haze, so dense that nothing beyond a meter was visible. The driver, a middle-aged man with a gaunt face, glanced at Min through the rearview mirror. He sighed, his voice hesitant. What brings you to Hassan village? Min turned to the driver, finding the question somewhat odd. I'm here to look into some family matters, sir. Is there something wrong? The driver hesitated, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. His eyes betrayed unease. That village isn't normal. You haven't heard the stories? Min frowned, intrigued. Not really. What do you mean? The driver sighed deeply, his eyes fixed on the road ahead as if dreading what might emerge from the mist. People go in, but not everyone comes back out. Since I was young, I've heard rumors about that village. People vanish without a trace, crying in the night, houses with occupants that no one ever sees. And that house at the end of the village. He trailed off, his voice lowering to a whisper. Chill ran down Min's spine. What about the house at the end of the village? The driver shook his head, refusing to say more. Min could see genuine fear in his eyes. The bus continued its journey, the steady hum of the engine the only sound in the eerie silence of the forest. The atmosphere grew darker as the last rays of sunlight vanished behind the trees. Then suddenly a shadow darted across the road. The driver slammed the brakes. The bus skidded, tires screeching against the wet pavement. Min was thrown forward, heart pounding. What was that? The driver didn't answer immediately. He held his breath, eyes wide with terror. There was nothing in front of the bus stop. Min swallowed hard, glancing out the window. The fog was too thick. He couldn't see anything beyond the swirling white void. The driver exhaled shakily, but his voice trembled. Get off the bus. I can't go any further. Min's eyes widened, but Hassan village is still far ahead. The driver shook his head firmly. I'm not taking another step forward. You'll have to walk, but listen carefully. If night falls and you still haven't found shelter, don't stay outside too long. A shiver ran through Min. The warning felt more like a curse. Not wanting to argue, Min grabbed his backpack and stepped off the bus. The moment he shut the door, the driver sped away, the vehicle disappearing into the mist as if fleeing for its life. Min stood still, watching the bus fade into nothingness. The silence around him was deafening. Adjusting his backpack, he turned toward the narrow dirt road leading into the village. Tall trees lined both sides, their trunks covered in eerie green moss. Not a single person, not a single sound. Taking a deep breath, Min stepped forward, but as his foot pressed into the damp earth, a fresh footprint appeared right in front of him. Min's heart nearly stopped. The footprint was new, as if someone had stepped there just seconds ago. He spun around, but behind him was only an endless wall of mist. A sudden gust of wind swept past, carrying with it a foul, rancid stench, and then, from within the fog, a whisper emerged. You're finally here. I've been waiting for you, ... The voice was barely audible, but Min could tell it was right beside him. His head snapped around, scanning the area. Nothing. But then as he looked down, new footprints appeared before him, one after another, as if cold shiver crawled up Min's spine. He took a step back. The footprints kept coming. He stepped back again. They didn't stop. Min inhaled sharply, gripping his backpack tightly. He had only one thought: get out of here. But the moment he turned to run, a freezing hand gripped his shoulder. Chapter 2. The ghost in the abandoned house. Min froze. The icy hand on his shoulder felt like solid ice, its chill seeping through his skin and into his bones. His throat went dry and his heart pounded wildly in his chest. He took a deep breath and slowly turned his head. There was no one there. Min swallowed hard and took a step back. But when he looked down, the footprints were still there. Only this time, they were no longer human. Instead, they were longer, with sharp claw marks embedded into the wet ground, like something that wasn't human had left them behind. Min didn't hesitate. He turned and ran. The narrow path led deeper into the village, lined with old wooden houses. Their windows were shut tight, casting eerie, flickering shadows under the dim glow of weak lanterns. But the strangest thing was, there was no one. The entire village was engulfed in a chilling silence. The wind howled through the wooden doors, creating ghostly wails. Min couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him from every direction. His breath quickened as he scanned his surroundings for a safe place. Then, through the thick fog, he spotted an old house tucked away in the shadows, its door slightly ajar. A wooden signboard swayed in the wind, its creaking sound unsettling. With no other option, Min dashed toward the house, pushed the door open, and slammed it shut behind him. The moment he entered, the air inside turned icy. A thick, musty smell filled his lungs. Mixed with something else, something metallic, he fumbled for his phone, turning on the flashlight. The dim yellow light flickered across the room, a wooden table covered in dust. Framed paintings on the wall, their images faded and rotting. A grandfather clock, frozen at 3 a.m. Min exhaled shakily. He was about to turn when his light fell upon a chair in the corner of the room. A rocking chair. It was moving, slowly rocking back and forth. But there was no wind, no one sitting in it. Just as Min took a cautious step forward, a soft giggle echoed through the room. His flashlight flickered toward the staircase leading upstairs. Darkness loomed at the top, but in that darkness something was standing there. Min couldn't see clearly, but he knew something was watching him. A cold breath brushed against the back of his neck. "You've returned." The voice came from right behind him. Min spun around, nothing. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He looked down at the floor. Wet footprints had appeared, and they were walking toward him. Min instinctively stepped back. The footprints didn't. Stopped. His hands trembled as he reached for the door handle. It wouldn't budge from the shadows. The rocking chair stopped moving. The entire house fell into an unnatural silence. Then, the closet door in the corner creaked open. The sound sent chills through Min's body. Inside, there was nothing but complete darkness. And then, a hand reached out. It grabbed the doorframe, its nails digging deep into the wood, pulling something out of the shadows. Min didn't stay to see what it was. He bolted for the door, yanking it with all his strength. Still, it wouldn't open. Behind him, something shifted. A raspy, wheezing breath echoed through the room. Min's pulse skyrocketed. Then voice, low, twisted, unnatural, spoke from the closet. "Stay with me." A shadow lunged from the darkness. Min screamed. With one final desperate pull, the door flung open. He ran into the mist, heart racing, lungs burning. But when he looked up, he was standing in front of the house again. Chapter 3. The voice in the darkness. Min stood frozen in the dark room. The sound of faint laughter still echoed, coming from all directions. He turned and shone the flashlight across the space, but saw nothing except dust-covered walls and thick darkness. But Min knew something was here. His breath grew hurried, his hand tightening around the flashlight, his palm drenched in sweat. The cold air enveloped him, carrying a foul stench, a mixture of damp earth and rotting meat. Creep, a noise came from upstairs. Min jumped and looked up. The old ceiling creaked and groaned, as if someone was moving above. Could there still be someone alive in this house? Min didn't believe in ghosts, but the events unfolding made it impossible to deceive himself. Every sense in him screamed to leave immediately, but something, an invisible force, kept him from turning and running. A cold breath brushed his neck. "You shouldn't have come here." Min froze. That voice, it didn't come from outside. It echoed inside his head. He spun around, but no one was there. Suddenly, the rocking chair in the middle of the room stopped moving. The room became completely silent, the deadly silence and then the wardrobe door in the corner of the room slowly creaked open. A shrill squeak pierced the air. Min stood rooted to the spot, his eyes glued to the slightly open door. Inside was pitch black, but he could feel something staring back at him. His breath quickened, sweat dripping down his forehead, and then a pale hand with long deformed fingers reached out from the darkness. It clung tightly to the edge of the wardrobe door, its long nails scraping against the wood, creating a dry scratching sound. Min stepped back. A second hand appeared. This time, it reached straight for the edge of the door, as if preparing to push hard and burst out. Min couldn't wait any longer. He turned and ran straight for the door. But just as his hand touched the doorknob, the door slammed shut. A powerful force, like an invisible hand, shoved him back into the room. Min was thrown hard to the floor. He tried to push himself up, but it felt like the floor was shaking beneath him. From the darkness of the wardrobe, a soft voice whispered, dragging out each syllable, sending chills down his spine. "You stay with me," Min screamed, wrenching the doorknob again. The door burst open. He ran out of the room like a madman, rushing down the stairs. But as he reached the last step, a cold hand shot out from the darkness. Grabbing his leg, Min tumbled to the floor, the flashlight rolling to the side. He kicked out hard, trying to break free from the cold grip, but it tightened, the nails digging into his skin. He screamed in pain, then suddenly it let go. Min crawled backward, his heart racing. He looked back at the dark corner where the deformed hand had appeared. There was nothing, just endless darkness. He picked up the flashlight and shone it into the corner, but as the light reached it, a pale face appeared right in front of him. Two hollow dark eye sockets, a skin-tight face as if it had been dead for a long time. Its mouth stretched open unnaturally wide, pulling into a sinister grin. Min screamed and ran straight for the front door. The door swung open. He ran out into the thick fog. When Min looked up, he was still standing in front of the abandoned house. He turned around. The door was still open, but inside, someone was standing in the doorway, staring at him. A copy of himself, but that copy was smiling. Min tried to steady his breath, trying to calm himself. He couldn't believe his eyes. His whole body trembled, not from the cold, but from sheer terror. He closed his eyes, hoping that when he opened them, everything would be gone. But when he opened his eyes, the copy of him was no longer standing at the door. It was standing right behind him. Min felt the cold breath on his neck. A hand gripped his shoulder, its nails sinking deep into his flesh. "You can't leave." Min screamed and swiped at it with his hand. He bolted, not knowing where he was running, only knowing he had to escape this place. But when he ran a little, he found himself right back at the door of the abandoned house. Min screamed in despair. He was trapped. The darkness began to creep in, engulfing everything. Chapter 4. The door leading to Helman stood frozen in front of the abandoned house. His breath short, his heart pounding as if it was about to leap out of his chest. He had just escaped, but now he was standing right in front of the door again. How could this be? He swallowed hard, his body shaking. The fog around him grew denser, almost swallowing the entire road and the empty houses in the village. Behind Min, the door slowly creaked open. A gust of cold air poured out as if the inside was no longer a regular house, but somewhere else, a door leading straight to hell. Min wanted to run, but his feet felt like they were cemented to the ground, as if some invisible force was holding him back. He could feel something staring at him from within the darkness of the house, and then, from inside, a pale hand reached out from the gap in the door. The hand had no skin, just bony fingers and long, sharp nails, scraping loudly against the wooden floor, creating an eerie sound. Min screamed and tried to move, but he couldn't. The door opened wider, and something began to crawl out. It didn't walk on two legs. It crawled with both hands and feet, like a spider. Its body was twisted, contorted like a broken puppet. Min only had time to see its deep, dark eyes before the darkness from the house swallowed him. Min woke up in the dark. His head throbbed. Everything around him was completely silent, except for the sound of his heartbeat pounding in his chest. He tried to breathe steadily, but the air was heavy, thick, carrying a foul stench. He realized he was no longer in front of the abandoned house. He was somewhere deep below. Min reached for his phone, but when he turned on the flashlight, the light illuminated something that made his heart stop. The four walls around him were covered in pale, bony hands. Hundreds of hands reached out from the walls, as if the people who had been trapped were trying to escape. Some of the hands were still twitching, their nails scraping against the surface of the wood, creating dry, crackling sounds. Min took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. This couldn't be real, but then, above him, a cracking sound echoed. He looked up. The ceiling was covered with hands, and they were crawling down. Something was falling toward him. Min dove to the side just as something fell directly where he had been standing. He turned around, his eyes wide in fear. A pale, misshapen body lay sprawled on the floor. No, it wasn't a corpse, because it just moved. Its head slowly turned 180 degrees, its hollow eyes staring straight at Min. Then its mouth opened wide, stretching all the way to its ears, forming a bloody grin. You can't escape. Min screamed, jumped up, and ran madly forward. The narrow, endless corridor stretched on. On either side, hands reached out, trying to grab him as he ran. Behind him, the scraping sounds grew louder. It was chasing him. Min couldn't bear to look back. He ran as fast as he could, his heart nearly exploding. At the end of the tunnel, an old wooden door appeared. Min rushed to it, pounding on the door. Open-eyed, please. Open-eyed, but the door didn't budge. Behind him, footsteps grew closer. Suddenly, Min remembered something. From deep within, a voice echoed in his head. To escape this place, you must leave part of yourself behind. Min didn't understand what that meant, but he had no choice. He took out his phone and opened the front camera. The screen didn't reflect his image. Instead, another face appeared on the screen. It was him, the shadowy figure with hollow eyes and a grin that stretched to its ears. It mouthed, "Let's switch places." Min didn't have time to react. The phone screen flashed bright, dot everything around him, shattered into pieces. Min opened his eyes. He was standing in front of the abandoned house. This time, the sun was shining. No more fog, no more darkness, no more hands reaching out from the walls. Only a quiet, abandoned house under the sunlight. Min took a deep breath. He was alive. He didn't understand how, but he had escaped. He turned and began to walk away, but as he took a few steps, a cold breeze brushed his neck. He stopped, turned, and looked back at the window of the abandoned house, and then he saw himself in the reflection, but the version in the mirror didn't turn to leave. It was still standing there, still smiling. Chapter 5. The lost soulsman stood, motionless in front of the mirror in the abandoned house. The reflection in it was not him. His copy in the mirror was still standing there, staring straight at him, smiling. The smile didn't belong to a human. Min felt a chill run down his spine. It wasn't just reflecting his actions. His copy in the mirror was watching him die. No, this couldn't be real. He had escaped. He was in the real world. Min clenched his fist. He had to leave. Without thinking any further, Min turned around and walked quickly away from the house. But as he walked a few steps, a heavy feeling suddenly washed over him. The air grew dense. Each step felt heavier. No, it wasn't that he was slowing down. It was as if time was slowing down. Everything around him became distorted, like Min was walking in a dream. He tried to run, but his feet felt glued to the floor. It felt like hundreds of invisible hands were pulling him back. Min screamed in despair, and then everything went dark. Min opened his eyes. He was somewhere far away, no longer in the abandoned house. No longer the village road. Around him was an empty field, covered by thick fog. Bare, withered trees stood scattered, their branches twisted like bony hands reaching out from the ground. There was no sound. No life. Only an overwhelming silence. Min took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. Where am I? No one answered. He turned around looking for any signs of human presence, but the only thing he saw were vague human shapes standing in the fog. They didn't move. They had no faces. The shadows just stood there silently, watching him. Min swallowed. He couldn't stay here. He had to find a way out. But as he turned away, a cold hand clutched his wrist. Min jerked, turning around in front of him. A girl in a white dress, her long hair covering her face. She had no eyes, two black, hollow sockets, deep like black holes. Her raspy voice came from deep within her throat. You can't leave here. Min panicked, trying to pull his hand away. But the girl held tighter. Her hand was freezing cold, as if it no longer belonged to the human world. Let go, Min shouted. The girl slowly lifted her head, her mouth opening unnaturally wide, and then from deep within her throat, a voice echoed, You are one of us now. Min felt a chill to the bone. He couldn't stay here. Without thinking, Min used all his strength to pull his hand free, pushing her down onto the ground. As soon as Min escaped her grip, the shadows in the fog began to move. They weren't standing still anymore. They were walking toward him. Min was terrified, turning and running, but there was no escape. Every path led to the same place, and then Min saw a small house appear in front of him with no other choice. He ran toward it and slammed the door shut, but just as he turned around, he realized he was still standing in the abandoned house. The old room, the musty smell filled the air, but something was different. The mirrors on the walls had disappeared. Instead, there were eyes. Hundreds of eyes grew from the walls, staring at Min. The presence of the lost souls filled the room. They had never left, and now Min couldn't leave either. He had become a part of this place. From behind him, a faint laugh echoed. Min froze. Someone was standing right behind him, but he didn't dare turn around this time. He knew for sure. The mirror in front of him began to tremble, and then, from the mirror, a pale hand with long nails punctured the glass. Reaching for Min, he screamed, but couldn't do anything. The darkness swallowed him. Chapter 6. The endless corridorman opened his eyes. His body was frozen, as if submerged in ice. He tried to move his fingers, but it felt like he was no longer himself. The cold air surrounded him. The space around him was no longer the room filled with eyes like before. Instead, Min was lying in an endless corridor. On either side, there were old wooden doors, each with strange symbols carved into them, as if this was a passage into another world. Dim light flickered from oil lamps hanging on the walls, swaying as if they were about to go out. The feeling of isolation, of being lost, overwhelmed Min. He didn't remember how he had gotten here, but one thing he knew for sure, he wasn't alone. Min listened carefully. The space around him was eerily silent, but then, from far down the corridor, a small noise echoed. Click, click. It sounded like nails scraping against wood. Min's skin crawled. He didn't want to, but he still turned his head toward the sound at the end of the corridor. A shadow was standing there. Its form was unclear. Its face was unknown, but it was. Watching Min. Min took a deep breath. He couldn't stay here. Without thinking further, Min turned around and ran down the corridor. But something was wrong. The corridor didn't seem to end. He ran and ran, but still only saw identical doors, stretching endlessly. It couldn't be. Had he been trapped? Min stopped, out of breath. He had to try opening a door. He grabbed the handle of the nearest door and twisted it hard. The door opened, but instead of a room, it revealed a pitch-black void. As if this door didn't lead anywhere. Min shuddered. He shouldn't go in there. He quickly slammed the door shut, but just as he turned away, the door opened again by itself. A pale hand shot out, grabbing Min's wrist. He screamed and tried to yank his arm away, but the hand tightened, pulling him toward the dark void inside. Min struggled, kicking against the wall to free himself. Finally, he tumbled back into the corridor. The door slammed shut, but then a knock echoed from the inside. Min froze. Knock, knock, knock. 3 soft knocks, as if something inside was waiting for Min to open the door again. Min shook his head and backed away. He had to leave right now, but when he turned around, the corridor had changed. Now all the doors were wide open, and from within, the shadows slowly emerged. No faces, no eyes, nose, or mouth, only dark figures spilling out from the doors. Closing in on Min, he couldn't escape. Min stepped back, his back against another door. As soon as he touched it, a chilling voice whispered in his ear, "You have no choice." Min shuddered, turning around. There was no one there, but the door behind him slowly opened. This time, inside wasn't a black void. Instead, it was a familiar room, the room from the abandoned house, the old walls, the rocking chair. The clock stopped at 3 a.m. Min gasped. He had returned, but how could this be? Min stepped into the room. It felt like he had never left, but something was wrong. This room had something different. Min looked around, then stopped in front of a large mirror in the corner. The mirror didn't reflect his image. It reflected another version of himself. The version in the mirror looked pale, more gaunt, and then the reflection in the mirror smiled. Min stood frozen. He didn't smile, but the reflection did. And then slowly the reflection raised its hand and knocked on the mirror. Knock, knock, knock. 3 knocks, exactly like the ones he heard. Before Min shuddered and took a step back, but the reflection in the mirror didn't stop. It continued knocking, harder, knock, knock, knock. Then the mirror shattered. The reflection stepped out of the mirror. Min screamed, but it was too late. The darkness swallowed him. Chapter 7. The truth in the darkness. Min sank into the darkness. It felt as though his entire body was being pulled into an endless abyss, weightless, with no stopping point. His heart raced, his breath grew more difficult. He couldn't scream. He couldn't move. He couldn't escape. There was only an endless darkness surrounding him. And then he fell. Min jolted awake. It felt like he had been thrown forcibly to the ground. His entire body ached, his head spinning. He struggled to regain consciousness, breathing heavily. Where was he? Min pushed himself up from the cold floor, trying to stand. But when he looked around, fear gripped him. He was still in the abandoned house, but this time it wasn't the same. The walls were covered in scratched red marks, as if someone had used their nails to scrape the wood. On the ceiling, black shadows hung, swaying back and forth. Faceless Dot, and in the middle of the room, the shattered mirror. But Dot, his reflection, was still there. It stood right in front of the mirror, its head bent low. Min stepped back, his heart pounding. It didn't move. But just as Min tried to leave the room, it lifted its head. Its hollow eyes stared at Min, and then it smiled. You think you can escape, it whispered. Min trembled, backing into the wall. The reflection didn't move, but Min could feel it coming closer. No, it couldn't be Dot. Min looked down at the floor. The shadow had reached his feet. Min screamed, bolting out of the room. But the corridor had changed. The walls were cracked, the doors on either side wide open, revealing nothing but swirling darkness like endless pits. And in the middle of the corridor, shadows were crawling on the floor, coming toward him. Min ran, running as fast as he could, but the corridor didn't end. He ran and ran, but darkness surrounded him until he saw the last door. On the door, a line of blood was written, the truth behind everything. To know, step inside. Min had no choice. He reached for the door handle, and then Dot everything suddenly vanished. Min opened his eyes. He was standing in the middle of an empty field. The sun was setting, casting a red glow across the sky. A gentle wind blew through the dry trees. In the distance, an old wooden house stood alone in the void. Min recognized this place. This was the abandoned house he had entered. But now, it looked different. It was no longer broken down. It wasn't rotting. The door was still shut. The windows still had lights on. As if nothing had ever happened. Min swallowed, walking forward. When he got closer to the door, a cold gust brushed his neck. Are you ready to know the truth? Min turned around. There was no one but on the door. A bloody handprint was clearly visible. Without thinking, Min grabbed the handle and pushed the door open. Inside, the house was pitch black. There were no furnishings, no lights, only a wooden staircase leading down to the basement. Min hesitated, but once again the voice came. Go down. The truth is down there. Min took a deep breath and walked down the stairs. Each step he took creaked eerily. Finally, Min's foot hit the cold floor of the basement in front of him. There was an old wooden table with a dusty notebook on it. Min walked up and picked up the book. On the cover, a name appeared, Nguyen Min. 1982. Min held his breath. He opened the first page. The Diary of Nguyen, MINH, July 12, 1982. I came to this village to investigate the mysterious disappearances of the people. July 15, 1982. I hear whispers at night. Something is very wrong with this house. July 20, 1982. I saw someone in the mirror who looked exactly like me. He is trying to replace me. July 22nd, 1982. I can't leave here. I'm trapped. I've become a part of the house. July 24, 1982. If anyone reads this notebook, run away. Never look in the mirror. Min dropped the book, his hands trembling. How could this be? He was born in 1995. How could there be a diary of someone with the same name as him from 1982? Was he dreaming? Min turned to run. But as he turned around, the basement door was gone in front of him. There was a large mirror, and in it, his reflection was waiting. Chapter 8. The ghost in the mirror man stood frozen in front of the large mirror. The reflection in it was not him. His copy in the mirror stood inside, staring directly at him. It didn't move, but Min felt as though its gaze was following his every breath. He swallowed hard, trying to step back, but his feet wouldn't move. Why? Why was it in there? Why did it feel like he had been here before? Then suddenly, the reflection in the mirror smiled, and it raised its hand, knocking on the glass. Knock, knock, knock. 3 knocks echoed, vibrating through the basement. Min froze, his heart pounding. He had heard these knocks before. They were the knocks from the hallway, the knocks from the locked door, and now they were back. Min tried to run, but his feet felt as if they were glued to the floor. It was as if an invisible force was pulling him closer to the mirror. He struggled, tried to scream, but no sound escaped his mouth. The reflection in the mirror stopped knocking. It tilted its head, its black eyes looking at Min with an amused expression, and then reached its hand through the glass. The pale, bony hand with long, sharp nails clutched the air, reaching toward Min. Min screamed, jerking his body back, but it was too late. The hand grabbed his wrist, pulling him toward the mirror. Min struggled, using his other hand to cling to the edge of the wooden table in the basement, resisting the powerful pull from the mirror. The darkness in the mirror began to swirl like a vortex, sucking him in. "Let me go," Min screamed, trying to punch the hand gripping him, but it wouldn't release him. "You can't escape, Min," the voice echoed in Min's head cold. Empty dud, it was its voice. Min panicked, struggling to break free. Its hand tightened, its nails sinking deep into Min's skin. Blood began to seep out. Min felt his whole body freeze. He couldn't let it pull him in. He couldn't let it replace him. But the force grew stronger. The space around him began to twist. Distorting the dark room was becoming darker. The shadows crawled out from the corners, whispering unintelligible words. Min saw pale, twisted faces emerge from the darkness. The lost souls. They were watching him. They were once him. They had also been pulled into this mirror, and now it was Min's turn. Min screamed, swinging his hand, trying to break free from the vortex. Then suddenly, everything stopped. Min collapsed to the ground. The hand in the mirror had disappeared. The reflection was no longer there. The space around him returned to normal. The ghosts in the basement vanished. No whispers, no crawling shadows. It was all just an empty room. Min panted heavily, hands gripping the floor, his heart racing. What just happened? Did he win? Had he truly escaped from his copy? Min slowly stood up, his eyes still fixed on the mirror. There was nothing in it but his own image. His breath was still quick, and he took a step back. No, it couldn't be that easy. A feeling of unease suddenly surged. Min looked down at his hand, where the copy had grabbed his wrist. There were no wounds, no blood, no HANDPRINTS. It was as if nothing had happened. Min froze. He turned back to look at the mirror, and then his reflection blinked. But Min had not blinked. A chill ran down his spine. He slowly raised his hand. The reflection didn't follow. Min felt suffocated. That wasn't him. The reflection in the mirror stared at Min, no longer smiling, and then spoke, finally. "I've switched places." Min's eyes widened, his heart nearly stopping. He jumped back, but it was too late. His reflection reached out, but this time, it wasn't pulling Min into the mirror, because it had come out. Min screamed. The darkness consumed everything. Years later, a group of young people entered the abandoned house. They laughed, pointed, and took photos. One person in the group discovered a large mirror placed in the basement. He approached, wiping the dust off the glass. In the mirror, it only reflected the image of the empty room. There was no one inside. But as he turned to leave, from the mirror, a pale hand silently reached out. Chapter 9. The horrifying looped space was completely silent. No sound, no breath. From the mirror, a pale hand reached out, its fingers long and claw-like, as if clinging to the real world. The group of young people had no idea. They were still busy taking photos, joking around in the abandoned house, thinking it was just a normal abandoned place. But one person in the group, a young man named Nam, suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He stood still for a moment, feeling like someone was watching him. Without thinking much, Nam turned around, his eyes accidentally meeting the large mirror in the basement, and then he froze. His reflection, was no longer standing still. Nam hadn't moved, but the image in the mirror was slowly turning its head, staring directly at him. "Damn, what is this?" He shuddered, instinctively stepping back, but the reflection in the mirror didn't step. Back it stayed still, its black eyes deep and hollow, as if there was no life inside. And then it smiled. Nam screamed, stumbling backward into an old wooden shelf. His friends all turned around. What's up, Nam? What are you yelling for? Scared again? Nam couldn't say anything, just pointing shakily at the mirror. But now, it seemed normal. It only reflected their images in the basement. Nam couldn't believe his eyes. What the hell just happened? He couldn't even imagine it like this. Nam's breathing grew heavier. He tried to calm himself, but a strange feeling surged within him. He knew something was wrong. The group continued exploring the house, but Nam couldn't focus. He always felt like someone was standing right behind him. Every time he looked at the dusty glass windows in the house, or any reflective surface, he always saw the shadow of someone standing behind him. But when he turned around, there was no one. Fear slowly began to take over Nam's mind. He wanted to leave immediately. "Hey, I'm going out first," Nam said, his voice full of tension. But none of his friends paid attention. They were still laughing, exploring around, taking photos. Nam didn't care anymore. He turned and walked straight up the stairs, leaving the basement. But the basement door wouldn't open. Nam frowned, pushing the door with all his strength. Nothing. Even though it looked old and decayed, it was now as solid as stone. "Guys, the door's stuck," he yelled, but no one replied. Nam turned around. The entire basement was empty. Where were his friends? They had just been here a few seconds ago. This couldn't be. Nam's heart raced. He looked around. The room seemed to have changed. The atmosphere had become thick, more suffocating, and then the mirror in the middle of the room began to shake. Nam froze, not daring to move. The glass began to crack, thin long lines like spider webs spreading across the surface. Then a pale hand reached out from the cracks. Nam screamed, trying to open the basement door again. He pounded on it, shouting, but no one could hear him. A second hand appeared. Then a face emerged from the mirror. It was Nam, a distorted version of himself. Its black eyes, mouth wide open to the ears. It smiled. Nam completely lost control. He ran toward the mirror and tried to break it, but there was nothing behind it. No reflection, no copy, nothing at all. Just an empty piece of glass. Nam panted heavily, cold sweat running down his spine. Am I ... going crazy? The basement door suddenly swung open. Nam jumped, turning around. His friends were still standing there. They looked at him with confused expressions. "What are you doing, Nam? You look like you saw a ghost. Come on, let's leave." "That's enough." Nam felt relieved, but a sense of unease still lingered in his heart. He took a deep breath, walked up from the basement, but when he passed by a dusty glass window on the wall, he briefly saw his reflection in it, and the copy in the mirror was staring at him, smiling. Years later, another group of young people entered the abandoned house. They laughed, explored, and took photos. One of them accidentally looked into the old mirror in the basement. In the mirror, there was the shadow of someone, but no one in the group was standing in that position. Then the mirror slowly cracked. Chapter 10. The never-ending curse of the broken mirror, where everything became thick and silent to an eerie degree. A long crack ran down the surface of the mirror, like a boundary separating reality from the other world. None of the young people noticed anything strange. Only one person died, accidentally saw the reflection in the mirror, and he froze. Dai's reflection didn't look like him. The reflection in the mirror was slightly taller, slightly thinner. Its eyes were dark, hollow, and then it smiled. Dai took a sharp breath, trying to tear his eyes away from the mirror, but he couldn't. It felt like an invisible force was holding his gaze onto that reflection. The sounds around him grew distant. Everything seemed to slow down. Inside the mirror, the reflection raised its hand and waved. Dui froze in terror, his whole body cold. He stepped back, but the copy in the mirror didn't step back. It remained still, its smile growing wider, stretching all the way to its ears. The nightmare begins. Dai felt his heart being squeezed. Am I dreaming? He clenched his fist, trying to remind himself that this wasn't real. But then, the copy in the mirror slowly raised its hand. He didn't move, but the reflection kept moving. And then, the copy placed a finger to its lips. Dai felt like the blood in his body had frozen. How could this be? He turned to call his friends, but as soon as he opened his mouth, the space around him completely vanished. Don't know way out. Dai stood in the darkness. No friends, no abandoned house, only his copy standing in front of him with its black, deep eyes. It stared at him for a moment, then it moved closer to him. Dai instinctively stepped back, but he bumped into an invisible wall. No way out. The copy kept moving closer. When they were just a few centimeters apart, it tilted its head and whispered right into Dai's ear. Now it's your turn. Then suddenly it raised its hand and grabbed Dai's neck. The horrifying loop. Dai struggled. He tried to break free, but the hand tightened. Distorted images appeared in his mind. Hundreds of faces exactly like his. Trapped in the darkness, they couldn't escape. They had once been in his position. They had been the ones who looked into the mirror before. And now, it was Dai's turn. He screamed, pushing the copy away with all his strength. It stepped back, but then it started laughing. A laugh that echoed throughout the space, cold to the core. Then, Dai felt like he was falling into an endless abyss. Back to reality, jolted awake. Everything returned to normal. His friends were still standing around, still talking and laughing. No one noticed anything strange. Dai panted heavily, feeling like he had just escaped a terrifying nightmare. He looked back at the mirror. Nothing unusual. The reflection was just him. It was himself. Dai took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. Maybe it was just his imagination. Maybe it was just because he was too stressed. He forced a smile and turned back to his friends. Let's go. This place is making me uncomfortable. Everyone nodded and continued heading for the door. Dai was the last one to leave, but as he stepped outside, he briefly saw a figure in the mirror, another version of him, still standing there, still smiling. The never-ending curse years later. The abandoned house still stood in the middle of the deserted village top. No one knew its true origin. No one knew how many people had entered and never returned. But one thing was certain: every time someone looked into the old mirror in the basement, the curse would continue. The mirror would always seek a new soul, because it had never stopped hungering.